do some taping. Come on inside. We're gonna do some taping. What are you on camera? Better get him, Dale. He's tired. I want you to tell Dale about this cemetery plot. She's going, now talk loud enough for her to hear on there, because she's taping you now. Oh. So start out by telling us about the cemetery plot.
Well, in 1877, Uncle William and Azariah settled Mary Woodson's estate, and they reserved 1 acre for the cemetery. But it didn't give the measurements and the locations of the readings. It said most conveniently for the cemetery. So it didn't sound too good. Might not have been legal since it didn't give the reading. So in 1922, it was Azariah Woodson's estate was being settled. And they surveyed it out and cut the lot out for the cemetery and give the reading on this particular plat. Now this lot where the cemetery is belongs to the entire Woodson generation and their kin. It doesn't belong to me, and it's shown on the map, see, on the plat right here. And it gives the reading right here of the lot for the cemetery. So it belongs to everybody, the family that is.
Well, who all is buried in the cemetery?
Since it's just field stones, we don't know. We know Mary Woodson's buried there, and we know Azariah Woodson. Mary Woodson and Tucker Woodson is buried there. But the other graves, there's 1 or 2 marked, but I can't remember who they are.
All right, now whose grave was recently marked down there?
There's a special slab put down for Tucker Woodson, and it listed where he came from the state of Virginia. And also it listed him and his wife and his children. It was all on that slab, laid flat on the top of the grave.
And how long has that been there?
Last 2-3 years, something like that. W.E. Woodson had it made and brought down here and had it put on.
That's one of the last things W.E. did. He had just had surgery on that leg, and we had a hard time getting him down there and back, didn't we?
Yeah.
Well, tell us about the organ over here.
Well, Azariah Woodson was a noted gospel singer. And it's his organ and also his songbooks. The songbooks, a bunch of his songbooks are still in it. Right in here. And now the only story I know about the organ, Azariah had an organ, and it was an older model. And somebody in the community ordered a new one, and it was shipped to Pelzer or Williamson one, I don't remember which. It was so long in coming, they didn't have any money when it came, and they come to Azariah to see if he wanted to buy the organ, because they'd done put a deposit on it. And so Azariah just made a deal with the family and told them, says, well, I'll just give you all my organ and I'll pay that one out. And that's how Azariah come to be the owner of this organ. It was shipped for somebody else, and they didn't have the money to pay it out when it got here. And he he gave them his organ. They still had an organ with their down payment, but it was an older one, see? And he gets the new one. He paid off what was owed on it after it was shipped.
Now that's a picture of Azariah up there, isn't it?
That's him in his Confederate uniform.
So he would have been about how old at that time?
25. He went in at 25 and he was discharged when he was 27 due to disability. He was shot all to pieces, and his right hand, he didn't have any fingers on it, so he couldn't shoot a gun, and he was discharged. So he worked the rest of his days with just one hand and a nub.
He came back here and dug the well outside with that nub.
Dug the well with one hand, more or less, with his old nub as a helper, and developed pneumonia before he finished. And he like to die, just said, with pneumonia from working in that well so much.
Well, let's go back to 1619 when Dr. John Woodson and Sarah Woodson came to Jamestown. They certainly weren't the first to come to Jamestown. I believe it's 1607.
1607 was the beginning, and the first winter, about half of the little settlement died. They didn't have a doctor. If disease hit them, it just spread, and they didn't have a doctor to doctor them, anything of that sort. And finally the British government sent a doctor over here, Dr. John Woodson. He is a graduate from St. John's at Oxford, listed as a surgeon and a medical doctor. And he got here, he came 12 years later, 16 and 19. They set sail in England the last of January of 1619 and didn't arrive here till, I believe, about the 1st of April. 2-3 months. And must have been some slow winds that winter.
Must have been. So now Dr. John had 2 sons.
Yeah.
And
John and Robert.
John and Robert. And
he married, Dr. John married Sarah Winston, and Winston is a very prominent name in England.
And I believe Dr. John was away, probably on house calls when the Indians attacked.
In 1644, I believe it was. And there's a fellow Lincoln was a shoemaker in the little colony, made shoes. Made shoes then, didn't have shoe factories. He came by to measure the family's feet to make them some shoes. And the Indians suddenly attacked, and so they barred the door. And finally found the Indians that Sarah heard them scrambling down the window, down the chimney. And she had on a big pot of boiling water. So she got the big pot of boiling water, and as the first to duck out out of the chimney, she poured that pot of boiling water on him. Well, that put him out of business right quick. A little bit, she heard another scrambling. And she took the big old poker, they called it a spit of that day, S-P-I-T. And she, just as he ducked down to come out of the fireplace, she brained him with that spit. That killed him. And the Lincoln, he shot about 7, I think he used the old Woodson gun, rifle, with about an 8-foot barrel. And through a crack, he was shooting Indians out in the yard. And he killed about, I'm thinking it was somewhere around 7. And he, so the Indians fled that place. They decided they was losing too many men there. And, but they had already killed Dr. John as he came in on horseback. They threw a spear in his back and killed him. They caught him by surprise.
Now, how did Sarah save the 2 boys?
She hid one under a tub.
Wash pot?
Yeah, an old big pot, and she hid the other one. She lifted up a wide board in the floor. They had a dugout where they kept the potatoes stored. Put them on the ground that way to keep from freezing in the winter months. And she picked that big wide board up, and she dropped one of the little boys down in the potato hill. Dropped the plank back down in there. So after that, the two little old boys, one of them was known as the Payhole Woodson family, and the other was the Tub Woodson family.
It's John and Robert now. Which one did we come from?
John.
And was he potato or the wash pot?
I think he's Potato Hole, I'm not sure.
Okay. Now the old gun.
And he had a son named John II. Well, John II, that was John II. Then they had a son named John III.
All right.
Then a Joseph. Then the Tucker, Murray, Azariah, Henry, Marvin, and Marvin Jr.
Okay. So I believe I'm the 10th generation from...
You're the 10th, I'm the 9th.
You're the 9th. So Tucker came here in February the 4th, I believe it was.
I think it's the 4th. That's the deed over there showing the date. I don't know what date he got here, but that's when he acquired the land.
Well, let's see the deed over here. Is this the deed?
Yeah. One of them, let's see them.
There it is right there. Year of our Lord, 1795.
4th day of February, the year of our Lord, 1795.
Well, I think it's interesting to note that this is the reunion for 1995, so this is the 200th
year.
So this
200th year was up from the purchase of the first land back in February the 4th.
Okay, now Tucker assembled a pretty good bit of land then, didn't he?
He said he owned all the land from Coolidge Bridge to up within 2 miles of which is now Pelzer, up the river.
And subsequently, some of that was sold off.
Well, the lower part where Louise Gaines lives was where they first settled, and then his wife Anna died in 1823, and and then he sells that to his daughter and son-in-law, all the lower end, but in the meantime, Murray had purchased the upper end of it, and he apparently come on upstream, just like drifted around, just an old widower, and he died up here and he was buried up here. He wasn't buried down there, because he done sold the land out down there.
Now you told me sometime that Murray's land got kind of divided up, and then my granddaddy Henry and you have pretty much put all that back together.
Murray's tract was cut up in smaller tracts in 1877. He died in 76. And some of the outlying areas of it was sold off. But my dad, Henry Woodson, bought a couple of them back, and I bought one back, and it so happened that we bought Murray's entire tract back and put it back together. We didn't know that until after it had done. What had guided us to do that is anybody's guess. But we done it and put it back together.
Can you tell me about the 3 guns here?
Well, I don't know about these two here, but this one is Henry Woodson's old gun. That's the same kind of gun that was used to win the West. A 38-55 Winchester holds 9 bullets. And they said that gun was capable of killing a person for a mile. And it's still perfect. Since it comes with an octagon barrel, it sells at a premium. The one that had the round barrel was cheaper, much cheaper gun.
This reminds me of the gun that was used by the TV show called The Rifleman, because of this.
Yeah.
Okay. The old Victrola here, where did you get it?
That's Henry Woodson's old first talking machine. And after we got modern, and he bought a big one that you cranked with that had a cab in it, and then he buys a self-playing piano. And he's moving on, and he bought him a big tractor and farm equipment, enlarged the house and all that. Got rid of the little old pump organ and got a self-playing piano and a larger talking machine.
Well, I remember the self-playing piano. Do you remember when he bought this?
No, I was a kid when I first remembered.
Well, this is not the bigger one that he bought, is it?
Similar to it.
Okay, this is another picture of Azariah, about the age of 25, you would say?
Between 25 and 27, because it shows the dates up there.
And you would say that this is pretty much similar to the one that Granddaddy bought?
That's very similar to the one we had.
Okay. And you wind it on the side.
Yeah.
And just turn this over.
Now, when I was a little kid, the children was told not to play Dixieland on this little Victor talking machine here. Not to play Dixieland around. Grandpa said he'd break down and cry. Because he'd been all shot up and wounded in the Battle of Bull Run, the second Battle of Manassas, it's called, a real name. And had to crawl to a house and beg for help, and they finally nursed him back to his health. And he got his discharge with a crippled hand. He couldn't shoot a rifle or a gun no more. Didn't have no fingers to pull a trigger. And his discharge hangs on the wall over here.
Where is the discharge?
Huh?
Show us the discharge.
And that frame right there.
Okay, and that's got another of those small
That's the discharge right there. I got that from the archives in Columbia.
Well, who is this gentleman here?
That's Azariah in his old days.
He sure does have the Woodson look, doesn't he? He looks a lot like my granddaddy Henry.
I was told over at Sam Woodson a short time ago, said I was just like my granddaddy Woodson. I don't know where I was or not. But
I guess I should
the old
say.
lady about 80-something years old said she remembered him and me too. So
I guess I should say my granddaddy Henry looked a lot like Azariah. Would be the better way to say it. Is there anything else in this room that you think's worthy of pointing out?
I don't know of anything except there's his old shoes in his last days. And there's his walking cane.
And this,
No, that don't. I just picked that up. That don't bother me.
okay. Is there a history to the clock on the mantle that you can
My
share with
mother
us?
said that they went to Anderson in a wagon from here and bought that clock. My daddy bought the clock in about 1903, and it's still running. He bought a clock. And she couldn't remember the year, but she said Leela was born that year, and she's a little tiny baby when she went to Anderson. That was her third baby, see. I said, well, Leela was born in 1903 in May. She said, well, that would have been May, and said that fall when we sold our cotton, we went to Anderson and said, your daddy bought the clock. That's the only way we could get a date. She remembered Leela was a little tiny baby, and we checked Leela's birth date, and she was born in the spring of 1903.
Well, let's walk in here and see if there's anything in the
That light up there.
foyer that needs to be pointed out. You have several things here that I think are worthy of note.
Thanks. This is the Davenport. Came from my mother's side. The boys in it. It's written from the battlefield in Atlanta, Georgia, just before the Battle of Atlanta. And the Davenport boy that wrote this to his mother, which would have been my great-grandmother, I think he was killed and he never got back in the Battle of Atlanta in 1864. This is Murray Woodson's war record in the War of 1812 right here, and he served in the war, and his salary was $8 per month. And this is a scorecard that somebody kept in this house of the war between the states, and it was found folded up and pushed in a crack. It's a scorecard of the Civil War. Tell who the generals were and where it was a Confederate victory or a Federal victory.
Well, now this is a
The estate settlement of Tucker Woodson right here in 1831. Listed as 5 children, 5 daughters and 1 son.
well, I note on here that that their portion of the estate was $529.13 for Jane Pottis.
Wow.
Charlotte Johnson got $539.31
Well, each one of them could have bought a 400-acre plantation with that money at that time.
and that the entire estate was $2,926.97.5. I think that's amazing that they actually value a penny enough to divide it up, and today people won't even pick up a penny.
$1.5 acre was about the price of land at that time. So that would have been over 2,000 acres of land.
Now who is this
That's
here?
Azariah, his old age.
That's Azariah.
Due to the fact that he was a noted gospel singer, he'd go out and conduct singing. He was sent in 1868, he was sent as a delegate from the Washington Baptist Church to the Honey Pass Singing Convention, which lasted for 3 days. And he didn't only sing and have a cripple band, but he had a brick factory. He made bricks. There's one of the original molds right there. He made bricks. And he had a shingle mill, and he made shingles just like this right here. Cedar shingles or oak shingles. And he had a sawmill, he had a brandy distillery, and he owned a country store. And he rented land and houses. Quite busy for an old crippled fella.
Is this the radio that?
This is the first radio that we got in the community. When night come, while our house would fill up with visitors to get to hear the radio play.
How many stations could you get? Do you remember?
Well, we didn't have any local stations then. We could get KDKA in Pittsburgh, and we could get WLS Chicago. That's the world's largest store. WLS. And we could get Atlanta, Georgia. That's about that's about all we got. He had picked up Havana, Cuba a time or two on it, but he'd have to catch that before day. You couldn't do much. You couldn't get much on it during the daylight hours. Have to wait till night. And
what about the Edison phonograph over here, the one that uses the cylindrical records?
Well, I bought that thing. A man let me have it. He was an old man, and he didn't have any family. And he said, he was an old man, and he said he didn't have nobody to leave it to. And said, I was the only one that he would want to trust with it. So, I can't think of the name right now. And said his mother bought it when she was a young girl, and she kept it stored in the bottom of a big old trunk and didn't let nobody use it, and it's still like a new one. And they say it has an appraisal of about $4,000, and the records are, they have an appraisal. They're Thomas A. Edison's records. Most of them has his picture on them. And they say those records are worth about $300 each. And the most unusual thing about this thing, it has a sermonette on one of them, singing and a scripture reading. First preacher probably was ever recorded on an Edison talking machine. And there's some money was used in the South. That's the Confederate money over right there. Confederate money.
Is there any particular story about the artifacts in the case here?
Well, I don't know. There's the first license plate was ever issued. You went to the courthouse and paid $1. You paid $1 taxes. And you go to the dime store and buy your numbers, just like you're going to put them on the house. You tacked them on a board and tied it to your car. You went to the counter seat to get your license plate for your car then. And that was, my daddy bought that to go on his first Overland car. Now there's a lot of story about that Overland. I saw that Jeep out there a while ago. That's the old, that come out of the old Overland factory.
Now this is the camera that was used when we were children.
Yeah.
It's called a Brownie Junior.
See if that won't straighten out. No. There's Murray Woodson's chest right there. Murray Woodson born 1790 in Virginia and died here in Greenville County in 1876. Those boards are 20 inches wide, the single boards are. That's his chest.
I got a newspaper clipping of Pelzer's first car.
I don't know anything.
Tell about the rocking chair, Granddaddy.
Oh, that's an identical twin to the same rocker that Abe Lincoln was shot in 1865 at Ford's Theater. Same color material, same everything. It's named the Lincoln Rocker. It's called the Lincoln Rocker. Even the material is the same color. Oh.
This brick.
Huh?
Did that not come out of?
That's one Azariah's old brick that's done crumbled away. Look how it shrunk. It showed you, it fit those things there to start with. See? Lay it on top so I'd hold that. Oh, that's right. There you go. I got it.
All right. Now this is a Franklin heater.
That's a Franklin. That's a carbon tip electric lamp just behind you there. That's a carbon tip electric lamp. Was used. They used it before Edison ever invented a light bulb. Used electricity to burn it, but yet you couldn't buy light. They didn't make light bulbs at that particular time. Let's see if I can. The wire done got away.
Well, we're running out of time, and some of our guests are coming, so let's go down to the store a little bit.
That burned by electricity. Made a bright light. Edison invented his light bulb in 1877, and this desk lamp is older than that because there's Addison, South Carolina, put those around the street, around the square, before they ever made a light bulb.
Okay.
That's my granddaddy That's my granddaddy James A. Bassey right there. He is the first old U.S. Marshal of this district.
And his wife's name?
U.S. Marshals was named that before there was sheriffs and deputies, see? Mm-hmm. U.S. Marshal is appointed by the government.
What was her name?
Huh?
What was your grandmother's name?
Tiny Davenport. James A. Bassett, Tiny Davenport.
Now tell about the time that she had to keep a prisoner. Didn't she have to keep a prisoner one time?
Oh, said Grandpa come by with a buggy and had a prisoner in him, had him chained, see? He said he'd been up all night and he had to have some sleep, so he went to bed but Grandpa chained him down at the barn and told Grandma to watch him while he slept a while. Had to carry, he's delivering a prisoner someplace. That's the old ice box was used in the early days. Poor folks would make their own homemade boxes, but that was a store-bought ice box there.
And this safe,
That's a corner cupboard. They say they said you couldn't put a price on that thing. It'd be so valuable.
is that part of the family, or did you just
No,
pick?
I bought that. I got that from JB. I don't know where he got it.
And this old safe over here. You know
Let's cover the old wood stove.
Okay.
There's the West Oakland School. Henry Woodson was one of the first trustees of the old West Oakland School right there. where I went to school as a kid. That's just across from where our house burns.
Yeah.
That's Henry Woodson's drawing. He drew that. He was good at drawing.
Let's look at this.
My mother wanted a new stove because she wanted a new stove because her family had grown so big. She had a little small stove and finally bought one that they said was a big stove. That's a Majestic. Now you can see one like that down at Disneyland in Florida, and you can see another one on Gunsmoke if you ever see Gunsmoke again. The only three I've ever saw like it.
And the water heated in the reservoir on the side here.
All water from the well, put it in there, that heat. When you're cooking, you heat your water too.
And it's in excellent condition too.
Here's the old dough tray where they mix the flour and cornmeal to make up the dough. That's been dug out by hand, and it has a homemade rolling pin with it. Homemade rolling pin and a homemade dough tray. That's back when folks had to do their own things.
Rolled out a lot of biscuits, hadn't it?
Now, I guess the dough tray's out of style, isn't it? The old irons, you used to have to heat them on your stove or by your fireplace. Let one be heating while you was cooling the other off, ironing your clothes.
Had to own 2 irons then, didn't you?
Huh?
Had to own 2 irons, didn't you?
Yeah, had to have 2. So you put one on the heat while the other one was ironing the other.
Okay, let's walk down to the store for just a minute.
Here's a 3-cent drink put out by the Coca-Cola Company. It broke a nickel instead of a dime was the slogan. You could buy a drink for 3 cents and you buy a hot dog for a nickel. And during the Hoover days, hot dogs got as low as 3 for a dime. 3 for 10 cents. The 3 cents drink, that gave you 13 cents, and they hadn't invented sales tax, so you could get a poor folks' meal for 13 cents if you had the 13 cents. And if you got a cup of water to go with it, well, that went free too.
I assume that's an ironing board.
That's an old ironing board.
No legs, just put it on the table.
Yeah. Here's where they ground the coffee. They ground the whole grain coffee, put it in that crank. Poured it in right up here.
This is an apple peeler.
That took the core out of the apple and peeled it all at the same time. Removed the core and it sliced it too, and kind of donut style.
Spiral.
And this is the old rub board where they scrubbed their clothes before. They hadn't invented galvanized tin at that time, and this one was made of wood. National Watch Board Company, Saginaw and Chicago and Memphis. They're in 3 places operating, building washboards. Saginaw, Michigan, and Chicago, Illinois, and Memphis, Tennessee. Got the names on it. So that's that. Well, let's see. I don't know whether this is right or wrong. Somebody else wants to show it. That goes to say that it's put on sale and Marvin bought it, that's what. They tried to knock him out of getting it, but he got it just the same. Hi, gal.
We're gonna buy a van along with the bus. It needs.
You want to rest a little before we do that other
Said they want to run. What's Dale running anyway?
Doing a videotape.
Got a video. Y'all excuse me. I had an old hearing aid that worked a little bit last night. Second quit. I don't know what it was.
We'll all talk loud enough for you. When I remember
So
that
I
old
just
bush
have to
there,
guess at what's going on today.
my daddy said he got
Have you been in the house?
Let's get this done.
Let's run down here and finish this up.
He's running a, when I've been through the house, he's running a video of this whole works.
I'll open it back up in just a minute. Right. I just wanted to get there. Okay, close enough to hear, Dale?
I'm moving in.
They tell me about Azariah's store. I understand this was the store building?
Well, he closed out the store about 1915 when I was just a little tyke. I barely remember it. And closed it out because he got too old to run it. See, he's getting on towards 80 years old at that time. And of course, a country store back in that day didn't operate full time. Little kid comes to the store on a mule with 15 to 20 cents. You'd have to ring the bell, and here's the story about this. You'd ring the bell and he'd hear it from the house. And the story about the plow, which acts as a bell, it was, Azariah Woodson went to Williamson about 1850 and had the plow made, and his daddy told him to go over there and have a 14-inch plow made. And the 14-year-old boy got his inches and feet mixed up, and he went on to the blacksmith shop and told him that his daddy wanted a 14-foot plow. Well, the blacksmith said he didn't make no 15-foot plow. It had nothing to make it with. What are you going to do with it to start with? Besides, you couldn't carry it home on a mule. Said, you sure it's not a 14-inch plow the man wants? And they showed him a 14-inch plow, and they decided that was what it was. And so this plow was made in Williamson about 1850, but a boy rode a mule over there to get it fixed. And so when it got old, Grandpa got old, he put it inside of his store building, so if you wanted service from the store, you'd ring the bell. Bang on the plow, wake up here, see?
I did. Is
That's
this,
a homemade plow made in Williamson about 1850.
now did he put this on here?
He painted, Azariah had that painted on there when I was a kid now, but I think somebody touched it up since. Azariah Woodson. Azariah's a Bible name. That's taken from the Bible. That's the way they used to bring it. That's the way they wants to name the kids, because that's what the only book they had, the Bible.
Now there's a
When a new
couple of,
baby come along, you looked in the Bible and named the little rascal, see?
there's a couple of things in here I think are interesting. People bought their kerosene. And why don't you show
That plants corn by hand. You put the corn in that little hopper there, and you walk along in the plowed ground, and you put that down in the ground, and you lean it back like that, and it drops a grain of corn in that hole. Planting corn.
Mm-hmm.
Planting corn by hand. That's a corn planter, used in the early days. That's where you bought your nickel's worth of kerosene, burning your lamp. You pumped it with this. Dropped a little jar, a jug, or whatever they had, to the store and buy kerosene. That little bicycle won the trick riding contest in the 1890s at the Fairview Stock Show. That won the trick riding contest at the Fairview Stock Show in the 1890s. Uncle High Cooley's the one who won the trick riding. It's junk now, but he had that as a young boy. Do all kind of trick riding on that bicycle. There's a collection of all kinds of tools in here. Everything from a can of axle grease, what you grease the wagon with. That little antique tool. You bored the hole with that. Sure, that's where you bored the larger holes. There's a can of special axle grease that you grease the wagon with. Grease the wagon with that axle grease. It says light diamond axle grease, 1 pound. Don't have wagons anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's Granddaddy's advice.
Goes down into a stump or something to hold it up and operates as a vise.
The spring wagon seats in here. There's an old shop forge and a bellows. The old hand cradle that you cut grain by hand and raked it up with a handful. The place is filled up with junk. Did you know about a man come in the shop out there the other day when I was there? You ought to hear this. He saw a little thermometer on the wall, so I got $20 for it.
Come in, Dale. Let's see if we could just get. This is a cradle. This is a bellows. No, this is the bellows.
You cut the grain and held it. One person go behind and tied it.
What's this called, Daddy?
That's the shop forge where
shop
you heat the
forge.
plows.
And that's the bellows over there. There's another
That's
cradle
the air
there.
right there.
All kinds of plows, plow stocks. There's a windlass and a well box back there. Here's a horse collar. Here's an old blowtorch. Other antique wrenches. Here's a set of ice tongs.
See if you can see the
Wooden
iron
kegs that nails used to come in.
See if you can find an iron
Flour
collar.
barrel.
See if you can find an iron collar on the wall over there somewhere. An iron might be one of that old coat. If that was, it was used in the fire department. Maybe somebody done bought it. I thought I had one. Oh, it's way back yonder. See that iron metal horse collar?
Yes.
That was used in the early fire department when they had horses to pull the fire truck. That iron collar.
I got it, Daddy. It's all
You get
right.
it from there?
She's got it.
That was used in the fire department. The horses was ready to hitch, all you done is snap the collar together and holler growing. Go to fire.
No, it's that far.
That split the boards from putting boards on the house.
What is this?
That wrings the clothes out. A hand wringer to wash when you wash your clothes.
This is an old wooden plane.
Somebody else's. There's a mallet there where you split the boards. Where's the mallet?
There it is.
That's where you split boards to make shingles of the early homes. Split boards for that to make shingles, wood shingles.
This is a corn sheller.
Corn sheller. You'd saw them up to see it in the woods and bring them up, and then you'd split them up and make your own boards.
It's a mole trap.
That catches mold. Put that over where the mold's been in the ground, and he goes along and he trips it and it snags him.
Well, this is a pea sheller over here.
That's a pea thrasher. You thrash peas in the early days, and you didn't have an engine. You had to turn the crank by hand to thrash the peas that you picked. Got a crank on it. See the crank? Who could you hire now to turn that thing? Thrash.